Chip Brown, Horns 247, has a show in the afternoon as longtime writer, columnist, joins us on 365 Sports. And Chip, thank you. Time with Craig and Paul, and I'm David Smoak. So how much – it seems like there's some schools that are going to be teams in the semifinals. I'm sure everybody could get a break and earn the break and enjoy the break. How much did Texas need that? Because it seemed like they were peaking at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword, but I'll say this. They needed to get Ryan Watts healthy, their 6'3" boundary corner, going up against this Washington top-ranked passing offense in FBS, 2,000-yard receivers and Roma Dunze and Jalen Polk. So as well as things were kind of coming together for Texas, they needed to end Xavier Worthy with the ankle injury in the Big 12 title game. He needs to get healthy. So I think they'll take the recovery over the momentum.
Chip, in the last two games, did Quinn Ewers move from good to great?
Well, he showed against Alabama that he could play at an elite level. And I think he, tapped back into that against Oklahoma State. And, you want to, if you're Steve Sarkisian, you want to know your quarterback can rise to the moment, that the moment's not too big. And obviously it helps to have receivers like A.D. Mitchell, tight end like Tavian Sanders and Xavier Worthy. But yeah, that was his best game as a Longhorn by the numbers. Now the interception he threw was terrible, and led to a touchdown for Oklahoma State. But, everything else he did, throwing for 450 and, moving the ball all over the field to different playmakers was outstanding. So I think that, he very well might have to do it again in the Sugar Bowl, because this could end up being a bit of a shootout. And Quinn Ewers has shown he can handle that.
Chip, what have you thought about the way the run games, or how they produced with the absence of Jonathan Brooks? And obviously a very cool moment there at the end of the game, Sark getting Brooks there to knee it out. Just your thoughts on both of those things. Yeah,
I'll start with the Brooks moment first. I thought, first of all, Jonathan Brooks, what a great story he was through the first, 9-10 games of the season. And then for him to suffer the torn ACL against TCU, your heart just sunk, because the guy was doing everything possible. And he really was the MVP of the offense at that point of the season. I mean, and he just embodied everything you want. A guy who's fighting through tackles and, always picking up yards after first contact. And so, for Sarkisian to be that forward thinking and tell the team on Thursday, when we win and we are taking the knee for the victory formation, Jonathan Brooks will be on the field with us. I thought that was really cool and really gets to Steve Sarkisian and his connection with his players and their connection with each other. And then as far as the running game, I think, Jaden Blue has been, he's been a revelation here these last two games against Texas Tech and against Oklahoma State. CJ Baxter, big, strong back, who can catch the football. But, Jaden Blue, who had not been used very much until Jonathan Brooks went down, has shown, hey, I'm good for 10 to 15 carries too. Don't forget about me. So Texas still has a little, 1-2 punch, a rotation there at running back. And you put in Keelan Robinson, who's had 4 touchdowns in the last 2 games. And Sark does such a great job of drawing up plays for Keelan Robinson. Now it was pretty much 2 outside zone running plays that he scored from 57 yards and 10 yards in the Big 12 title game, but he had a screen against Texas Tech, and Sark's screen game is just so good. So that Texas looks like they're still 2-dimensional.
Robinson, I know he hasn't had a lot of carries as far as rushes, just 12. He's averaging 11.2 yards per carry, and it does seem like every time he carries the football, it's 25 to 30 yards, and about every other time a touchdown.
Yeah, and he's a veteran. He's ready. He's always ready. And I think that Sarkisian has turned to him with Jonathan Brooks injured and said, okay, you're doing everything for us in the return game and on special teams, trying to block, punts and kicks. And, now we need you to help carry the load in terms of the offense. And the guy just does whatever's asked. It's going to be fun to see. He might remind you a little bit of like a Vontae Turpin type of player who will probably make an NFL roster next year as a return guy and will just do anything that's asked.
Chip Brownhorns 247 with us on 365 Sports.
Chip, this, the bad matchup for the Longhorns in this one is the wide receivers versus the secondary, which is struggle. But you mentioned getting Ryan Watts back. Is that where you think the kind of rubber meets the road when it comes to how this game will go from this very vaunted Texas defense?
Well, they've got to stay aggressive. They got those 3-score leads against Houston, TCU, and K-State, and they started to play soft coverage, try and zone, try to keep everything in front of them, and they're just not built for that. And Sarkisian finally, went to Kwiatkowski and said, "Hey, we got to stay aggressive. This is what we, said we were going to do. We're going to play up on the line, and a guy like Malik Muhammad, the freshman, that's what he's all about. Like, he's better in man than he is, playing zone as a true freshman. And so they got back to getting up on the line against Texas Tech and just running with receivers. And if they give up a big play, they give up a big play, but they're not just going to get completely annihilated in the passing game. And that's what was happening. When they get these leads, they build the lead one way and then change. And, against Washington, I get that you can't play man every snap and they're going to be really tricky and Kalen DeBoer does a good job of moving receivers around and not letting you kind of get into a rhythm. But Texas has got to stay aggressive because they are just not they have not shown that they can, play decent zone coverage against a quarterback and receivers who can get hot. And good God, Michael Penix, we know he can get hot with guys like Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan. So it's going to be fascinating. But yeah, they need Ryan Watts. They need, Malik Muhammad. They need Terrence Brooks, Gavin Holmes. They need all those guys to be, totally on their game. And with 15 practices, the equivalent of spring football, you would expect that you'll see the best product yet that we've seen.
Chip, Texas has had a lot of great defenders, a lot of great defensive linemen over the years, but with their big guys up front right now, how does that stack up, you think, to years past and especially some of the better Texas teams you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote an article at Horns 24/7 earlier in the season about how Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, they stack up with, Roy Miller and Lamar Houston and probably, you go all the way back to Casey Hampton and Sean Rogers. I mean, the way these guys feed off each other, their chemistry together, Tavondre Sweat, the 362-pound immovable object, and Byron Murphy, who just penetrates. I mean, he just gets into gaps. And credit Bo Davis, the defensive line coach, for making that getting Pete Kwiatkowski to commit to that, because that's what, Byron Murphy's so good at. And he's been such a force, and he and Sweat together, and Barron Sorrell and Ethan Burke. I mean, Ethan Burke leads the team in sacks, and he played 4 games with a serious knee injury, got arthroscopic surgery during the season, missed the BYU game, came back and had 2 sacks in the K-State game, including a strip sack at the 5 that Texas scored on the next play. So, this front is for real. And, it's not a great matchup for Texas. They probably match up better with Michigan, honestly, because no one is really run on them with a designed running game. Dylan Gabriel ran for 113 yards, but majority of those were on broken play scrambles and as far as just trying to run their normal offense, Texas Tech and Oklahoma State with Taj Brooks and Ollie Gordon, 2 of the top 3 rushers in college football, they couldn't do it. So it'll be interesting to see how much pressure they can get on Michael Penix, because that's going to be the key, especially if they can get pressure up the middle.
Chip, coaches, ever since Mac left, there has been this culture. And sometimes it might be overrated or maybe brought up. But it seems like Sark has done it methodically, because there has been, with the glitz and glamour, entitlement that has at times eaten up that program. How did it change? How did he take, I was looking at Jordan Whittingham, and the numbers he has, 38 catches, that's a star. That's a guy that could be a star somewhere else. Or Keelan Robinson with 11, 12 carries, but he's got a kick return for a touchdown. How has he been able to manage them? And it's easier said than done to truly believe in what is better for the team rather than for you.
Yeah, and I give Sark a lot of credit. I mean, I think his first year he was observing and evaluating who was in, who was out, and they went 5-7, and it was ugly, six game losing streak, longest since 1956. But then, Bo Davis kind of did took the trash out on that bus in Ames, Iowa, saying, some of you bleeps need to get in the portal if you think this is funny. And he sort of said what all the guys on the team who wanted to be there were thinking. And so, Sarkisian and Bo Davis joke. Sark's always like, hey, Bo, they're going to build a statue of you in the North End for that moment, because that sort of was the tipping point. And then Sark, started instituting the Culture Wednesdays, where he was having all the players meet in groups during the summer so that every player on the team got to know the life story of every other player on the team. And I think that, that is the kind of stuff that builds a bond. And Sark was first. He always went first and was vulnerable and talked about, his life lessons and why this job matters to him and why the players matter to him. And, his son is in the room, Brady Sarkisian is in the room. And it just, I think the players really felt like, okay, this guy's about us. And so they were willing to give back to him.
Chip, the break, we discussed that, the momentum to give that up to get healthy with especially a couple of key players. Worthy had the ankle, which could have been really disastrous, could have been a ligament, could have been a bone. He seems like he'll be okay among some others. Give me an unsung hero on this team of otherwise a bunch of players that are really, really good. Give me a couple of them if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you look at, special teams, Ryan Sanborn, the punter, who's averaged 46 yards a punt. Bert Auburn, who started off the season 5 of 9, and people were questioning whether, he should give Will Stone a try kicking field goals. And then, Sark stands by him. The kid makes 19 field goals in a row. And then, I think there are some guys who are kind of waiting. Well, Anthony Hill, I mean, everyone knows about him, the 5-star, but for him to come as far as he has, I did a story today comparing his numbers to DeMarvion Overshone. Both, Overshone was the second leading tackler last year. Anthony Hill's the second leading tackler this year, and he didn't even, he was a situational pass rusher at the beginning of the year. He's got more sacks than Overshone had last year, more, quarterback hurries. That kid has, just become a monster here in front of our eyes. So Jalen Ford told me that kid's going to be better than I am, and if he's not, I'll be disappointed. So Derek Williams at safety, another guy who's kind of just gotten better and better as the season has gone on. He got ejected for targeting in the second half of the very first play of the second half on the kickoff. It was, and then they appealed it and they didn't, it was denied. So he's going to miss the first half of the Sugar Bowl, and that hurts because, he's been one of the better safeties going up against that Washington defense.
Chip, appreciate your time, man. Thank you very much. It should be one heck of a countdown to what's going on. When the Big 12 found out that Texas and OU were leaving a couple of summers ago, there has been this narrative, and a lot of it because Texas was not reaching what most people thought their standard of what it should be. Have they kind of like put people on alert because of the run they've made that, hey, we're going to be just fine next year when we join the SEC?
I mean, we'll see how, they're going to lose Devondre Sweat. They're probably going to lose Byron Murphy, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, maybe J.T. Sanders to the league. So, but they're good in the trenches. I mean, if they get Alfred Collins back, Vernon Broughton back, they should have the offensive line back. They should be able to compete in the SEC. And Quinn Ewers, I think, is still trying to figure it out. He's not a slam dunk to go to the league. We'll see how these next couple, see how this game goes against Washington and whatnot. But, I think Sark's done a really good job in recruiting. He's got to continue to build up that beef on the defensive line. That's going to make or break it because he did not recruit Devondre Sweat, and that guy turned into, an All-American, a Outland Trophy finalist. And now he's got to bring in those guys because we all know that outside of quarterback, those difference-making defensive tackles, like Siaka Ika at Baylor, those are the guys who, they're the most important guys outside of the quarterback in recruiting, and they're the hardest to find.
Thank you, Chip. Appreciate your time. Chip Brown, 247 Sports with us on UT earlier.